New York Times reporting that Inspector General Michael Atkinson told lawmakers during that closed-door briefing that the whistleblower complaint against the president was not just about one instance, one call with a foreign leader, one time, but that it was about multiple acts, saying the complaint was related to a series of actions that do go beyond any single discussion with a foreign leader. Joining me on the phone is New York Times Washington correspondent Charlie Savage and MSNBC political analyst. Give us a little more sense of what your colleagues are reporting at the Times.
That's right. So a large number of us are all trying to figure out what's going on with this mysterious whistleblower complaint that Congress says the Trump administration by law must turn over, and the Trump administration is refusing to do so. And the latest version of this, coming out of this testimony by the intelligence community's Inspector General this morning behind closed doors, is shaking out of this. This is not about a single communication between President Trump and a foreign leader, but rather about a series of them and about some kind of commitment he made over the course of that series of conversations. And one of the implications of that is that everyone's looking at who did he speak to the week that this thing was filed in the middle of August. That may be a red herring, because this may have been something that was unfolding over time.
Yeah, and one of the keys to this, obviously, is the phrase urgent concern, that the Inspector General believed that this whistleblower and the information that he had was of so much urgent concern that it needed to be looked at. A legal threshold, by the way, that requires Congress to be notified, which is what had Adam Schiff clearly so, I don't want to say angry because he was very controlled, but he's clearly unhappy with the way this has gone.
That's right. So urgent concern isn't just a phrase. It's a legal term of art. It's written into the 2010 law that created the Inspector General for the intelligence community. And it means that it relates to some kind of a problem, an abuse, law-breaking, violation of an executive order, or something of that nature related to an intelligence activity. And if the Inspector General finds that it meets that standard and, after looking at the information, finds that it's credible, he has to send it to the Director of National Intelligence, who shall, quote unquote, within 7 days, tell Congress about it. And so that is what the way the law is written. It sounds like the Inspector General makes the determination that this meets that standard, and then there's no choice. Congress has to know within 7 days whatever it is. It can stay classified, it could be behind closed doors, but it can't be kept hidden. And the Trump administration is disputing that it meets that standard and kind of walking around the fact that the way the law is written, at least, it doesn't seem to give any discretion to the Director of National Intelligence to second-guess the Inspector General's determination.
Well, we already knew about this potentially explosive complaint. Now we understand that it may indeed involve not just one, but multiple different instances. Charlie Savage, thank you so much. Folks can read this. It's posted now on the New York Times website.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.